Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of the Team Member Perspective Podcast Show. I am your host, Coulter. Super excited about today's episode. I have top producing team member Gary Meadows. Super excited to have Gary in our Team Member Perspective group. Gary has proven his consistency. This guy is consistently in the top 3, top 5 every single month in his life and health production. I'm excited to get inside Gary's mind a little bit today and kind of learn from him. I know all of us start somewhere, but as of late, within the last few months, Gary has had a significant increase in his life and health production. And so I'm excited for him to share a little bit about how he's done that. So Gary, my man, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Coulter. I think we'll be able to learn something from this for sure.
Well, Gary, why don't you first start out by telling us, how long have you been a team member? How long have you been in the insurance space?
So I started selling insurance, like a lot of us in this group. I had no idea what I was doing. In November of 21 is whenever I started here at State Farm. And before that, had no insurance experience at all. So, I had no idea what I was getting into. As a few months went on, I figured out, kind of how to do it and what to do. But really in the last few months is whenever I've figured out how to sell financial services and really market those products in a good way.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have any sales experience before this job, or is this kind of your first sales job?
Honestly, no. I worked at a golf course before, so I think that did help me, learning how to talk to people, working just with people in general. My dad is a salesman, and it's kind of something I've always wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in sales. So whether it was going to be selling this, selling that, I wanted to do something inside of sales. So I've kind of been always geared towards that. So definitely don't have any prior work experience necessarily, but, I have seen it in the past.
Yeah. I love that. Well, cool. And then insurance 2021 was your first year in insurance, almost really end of 2021. Kind of started 2022, so it's only been a few years.
Right. Yeah, so 21, we were just kind of getting everything started. So Christian, our agent here, he actually took over this book then. It's a pretty big book before that, and he took it over, and we were still figuring everything out for the first 5 or 6 months, I'd say. But then after that is when we really started to produce some life insurance, but it was still not to the caliber that, we are at now.
Okay, so I want to kind of dive into that a little bit, right? Because I think I know we have a lot of team members that listen in, and even agencies that they're kind of in that early stage where they don't have the life and health production where they want it to be. Even maybe it's auto insurance, fire insurance. They're just starting out, right? And being in that area, I think we can all relate, right, Gary, that it can be a little discouraging. We're we want to produce at this level, but this is where we're at. We see that gap and we're I don't even know how it's even possible to get there. So it can be discouraging, but let's go back to brand new to insurance Gary, right? You just start out. What did the life and health production look like at that point for you?
So then whenever I started, we were still doing the $10,000 final expense policies. It was before the guaranteed one was available. So that was one of our big things in the office was we tried to do a lot of final expense stuff like that. But I was always trying to sell the auto, sell the home policy, and then on the back end, get that life insurance after I've already sold the auto and the home. And 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't work because people, they get the auto and the home price. It's $150, let's say. And then, they're already ready to pay for it. But then if you tell them, going to be an additional $40 some to get this policy, most of the time they don't want to buy it. Now, it did work in the past for people that did want something set up, but for people that, instantly say no to life insurance, it just doesn't work out that way. So we were only selling maybe 10 financial service policies a month back in the beginning. So it was real slow, and it just didn't make sense to me in my head why we didn't do it and why we weren't producing as much. And definitely, like you said, make you get discouraged. I would say lose an auto policy because I tried to sell a life insurance policy with it, and I'd get super down on myself and and be worried about losing that one auto or one home because I tried to sell life insurance with it.
Yeah. Interesting. And I think that mindset, like I can relate to that early on as well. Like I just couldn't figure it out. It didn't make sense in my mind. I did not want to risk losing the auto and the home by selling the life and health. And so it was so easy for me to, just like you, like once you give them the price of the auto at 150 a month, then try to go from 150 to say 200 a month with a life policy. And I didn't find success in that. And I think pointing that out, like it's anchoring, right? Like if you start with a price, that's what people are going to like, they're anchored to 150. So to get them to
Exactly.
go to 200 a month, like with insurance, something that people don't even want to be paying for in the first place,
Right.
right? We have just lost on price. No matter how good we are at building value, we have anchored them in at 150 that it's so easy for people to just say, you know what? Nope, I'm good. I want just the auto and the home, right? And so I think it's psychology, right? Like if Gary, I'm a new customer and I'm calling in. I mean, we've got to think about the average person. How much do they understand about insurance? Number one. Number two, how many of them actually know what they need or what they want in regards to life insurance or health insurance, right? Like insurance is just a complex space. People don't understand insurance. And so in my mind, I'm just calling to get my car insured because I need it. It's required. Why would I pay more money to get something in place that I don't actually need and I don't feel like I need or nor do I want, right? And so you pointed that out. I love that. Like anchoring's a big deal, right? And I think in the industry we always talk about don't sell on price. If you start with price, you're going to lose on price. Sell on value. We always talk about selling on value, but all of us are kind of doing ourselves a disadvantage. We're almost shooting ourselves in the foot by just giving them the price and trying to upsell from there, right? Because once we talk about price, now it's a price conversation. And to get away from a price conversation is pretty difficult in this. And so I love that. So early on, Gary, not really selling financial services in the office or, you personally, maybe 10 financial services a month. In what was your, like of those 10, how many were you doing as the team member?
Then probably three or four. That was like, kind of my average throughout 22 and probably halfway through 23. Around three to four a month, a couple life, maybe a health. And I might have had one month where I sold seven or eight, but it was never anything over 10. I can always remember that. I never sold any more than 10 financial services in 22 or until we started in this group, actually.
Okay. So you started with us in the team member perspective. What are you averaging now? So you started 3 to 4 health a month on average early on. Now, what are you averaging in the life and health categories?
Last month, like January, I had 25 financial service apps. February, I had 27, I believe, and right now I'm at 30 for this month already. So, definitely a
Whew.
big jump.
Man, it's been so fun to see you, dude. Like consistently show up every single month. And I mean, everybody knows Gary Meadows. Like Gary Meadows is showing up on the leaderboard. He's the guy to beat right now. But guys, he started out with 3 to 4 financial services a month. He is now averaging close to 30. The belief that I hope we can all develop after this episode is if Gary can do it, so can I. Right? And Gary, let me ask you this. Do you feel, because I feel like 30 application, like that is a lot in my mind. And I think in a lot of people's minds, it's like, that's got to be a lot of work. Do you feel like you're working harder now selling 30 plus financial services versus when you were selling 3 to 4?
Honestly, no. It's just the way I've geared my sales tactics. Before, I was trying to sell a lot of autos and homes. That was my thing. I can sell auto and home insurance like it's nothing. So I would just sell a lot more auto policies, a lot more home policies. I'd still do around the same amount of apps as I'm doing now. Just then it was auto, home, renters, stuff like that. Now where I'm trying to multi-line in these financial services, life and health apps, it's a lot easier. I can do a lot less households, but still get the same amount of apps, by bundling in these products where before I was just trying to get as many households as possible.
Beautiful. I love it, man.
One thing I will say though, on the applications, the life ones are a little bit more tedious to run through. The health ones are a little bit more tedious to run through. But once you do them 10 or 15 times, just like we did on the auto and with the homes, whenever we were learning how to do them, you're going to figure it out and figure out what buttons you need to press and how to go through them. So that was one of my biggest things was I was scared to go through an application. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what questions I had to ask. So what did me and Christian do? I did one on myself and figured out exactly what I needed to do, what questions had to be done, if there was medical exams, stuff like that. And that really helped me out, just seeing what it was. And that helped me, let other people know what it is, what the product does, and then how to actually submit that policy if they want to do it.
Glad you brought that up, man. Because early on as a team member, my first 2 years in the business, I wrote maybe 10 life apps a year, right? Like, not great production at all. But a limiting belief that I had was that. Like, a big thing for me is I just thought that the life application and the underwriting was so tedious that it would require all of this time from me, and it just wasn't worth my time. For whatever reason, that sat in my mind. And I think another one is, like, look, I don't know how to do this application, right? That could obviously prevent us from having these conversations and actually diving in and writing life insurance. And so I think team members that are listening to this, like, ask yourself, what is it that is keeping me from selling life insurance? For me, it was a limiting belief early on that it was a lot more complex than it actually is. For Gary, he didn't know how to do the application, right? So identify that and then just start getting going. If you don't feel like you know how to do the application, it's an easy fix, right, Gary?
Oh yeah,
right?
$30 a month.
You honestly just go do the application until you feel comfortable. Like, you're not
100%.
expected to know how to do the application when you haven't done it before. So stop using that as an excuse and there's a solution, right? Do an application, go through it on yourself every day. You don't have to submit it, but then you can get familiar with the workflow, and then that's one less thing that you have to worry about that's preventing you from even doing it, right? I love that, Gary. So now year to date, the time we're recording this, we're close to the end of March. How many life apps and health apps do you have submitted year to date?
I believe what I told you yesterday, I was at 57 submitted on the life and then 24 health submitted already.
First 3 months of the year, guys. 57 life, right? He keeps that up, it's going to be over 200. What a treat, man. That's going to feel good on the paycheck.
100%.
Well, I know, Gary, it's not all about money, but do we show up to work for free? Right?
No,
We're
sir.
there for money. Want to make some money. And I'll tell you, me learning to sell financial services at the level I did consistently, and I would argue this is the same for you, Gary, but changes your income quick. It can change your life financially by just learning to be consistent in these places, which I love.
Very much so. Like, whenever, like we talked about a little bit, one of the biggest things that changed in our office here was the commission structure. So the way we get paid, before it wasn't as financial service geared towards it, let's say. Once Christian did change that, we had to start selling financial services or we weren't going to make no money. And I'm just not going to make no money. That's not me. So I figured out what I needed to do that. And that was one of the biggest things I think that actually helped me was it started me to actually look into how to sell life insurance, how to sell financial services. Before, I never really had like something pushing me to go actually learn it. That changed it, and that really, really helped.
Dude, I love that you bring that up, and we're not going to get into any details about that commission structure, but I think just generally, like, agents listening to this, like, take it from a team member perspective. Are your team members incentivized to sell these products? Because you might be pushing these products, say, hey, we need to get more life and health production, but the compensation structure just isn't there. Like,
Right.
There's no incentive to do that. So evaluate that. Even go straight to your team members and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how incentivized are you with the current commission structure with financial services? talk to your team. Like, they're the people that are going to be doing it for you. Make sure that you're incentivizing them. Because I'll tell you, just like you, Gary, our commission structure, I was incentivized to sell the life and health. And on the flip side, for team members, know how you get paid, right? I think even for agents, know how you get paid. Then you can maximize that, right? And I think it's important to do that. But that's what I knew exactly how I got paid for the life and health insurance, auto insurance, all of those things, which gave me that root of like the piece of motivation for money was I knew how I got paid. So I knew what I needed to do to maximize that. Because I know for a fact, team members and agencies, we are leaving a lot of money on the table. A lot of money on the table just by simply not knowing and understanding how we get paid. I love that. I absolutely love that. Love that, Gary. Okay, couple other things I kind of wanted to talk through. So biggest things, man, like going from 3 to 4 a month to now 30 plus a month in financial services. You mentioned, like, let's talk a little bit about what changed as we finish up today. First thing was you started to, instead of going after the home and auto and then going after life and health, you started to kind of incorporate that into the main conversation in the beginning, kind of the bundle approach and guiding customers to kind of this is what we recommend, right?
Before, I was really trying to sell to who I thought needed insurance, needed life insurance. And that's not really how this game works. You know, you're not going to nobody wants life insurance. Nobody. Because it's not required by the state. You know, you don't have to have it. So it's just kind of like an additional cost that people see they're paying nothing for. But whenever I started to, you know, quote everybody with it, quote everybody with a life or a health, or sometimes both. I've gotten plenty of younger people with getting them a life and a health just because it's so much cheaper than the competitions right now. But, you know, really just quoting everybody, the amount you put in, if you quote everybody with a life or a health app, you're going to sell a lot more life and health apps just because the amount you put in is the amount you get out. If you don't quote anybody with life and health, you're never going to sell a life or health app.
Isn't that funny?
Oh, yeah.
It could be that simple, man. Like, I'm right there with you, right? Like we hear it. It's so cliche, but we hear it. You're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But honestly, I would argue that the majority of team members just aren't taking the shot. So let's talk about that. Why team member? Yeah, like I wasn't either, man. Like and there's reasons why we weren't. We kind of identified those. Gary, you didn't really understand the application process. I thought the underwriting process was just too complex and not worth my time.
Yep.
But like, let's explore a little bit more, like why, team members listening to this, do a self-diagnosis, understand yourself. Like, why are you not giving them the option, right? Why are you not quoting a life and health with every customer that you can? Out not selling policies, but now I've sold a lot of life insurance. And to be on the back end of seeing a policy that I personally wrote pay out and see how that, helps the family, that will change your belief quicker than anything. But also,
100%.
Right? I don't know if you've been there, but if you haven't,
So that was one of my notes actually on here too. You know, I kind of did feel that way almost, like kind of sleazy, going behind somebody's back until Nicole Nelson was the lady's name called in. I had sold her husband's auto policy and I bundled in a Giphy with it maybe 6 months before that. She called in, obviously hysterical. Her husband had gotten in a car accident and had gotten killed. So she was freaking out, didn't know what to do. She didn't even know he had that policy set up yet. So that was something he just set up, I guess never told her. And whenever we let her know that, it really changed what her life was going to be. I mean, because, unfortunately she just didn't have anything set up behind that, for something like that other than what we had set up over here. So that one, Chayton Nelson, I will remember that one forever.
Yeah. Like once you have an experience like that, dealing with those feelings of maybe feeling sleazy, which by the way, it's all your approach. Like if you feel
you
that way,
shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah, it shouldn't, but I think it will for a lot of team members, but just evaluate like why. Like don't be like if you want to be very clear on what you're helping your customer get, right? and you're not just sneaking it in there, not telling them about it, that's not what we're doing here, right? We're educating them and we're very explicitly telling them this is exactly what we've got, but we're selling the benefits, not just the price, right? We're helping them understand why this stuff is important, not just, hey, we're getting you this because we can save you money overall, right? But even in this situation where, you wrote a policy, and to be able to see how that helps provide space for that family, right? I mean, think about it. People losing their best friend, like that is a hard part of life. It's very, very difficult. And a life insurance policy is not going to fix that completely, but will it provide space? Absolutely. Will it allow them to focus and be able to actually mourn instead of having this added financial burden? Absolutely. That's what we got to be able to do as team members, right? And I'll tell you, dealing with the uncomfortableness of feeling these feelings, like it's all personal. Like you gotta figure out, why do I feel this way, right? Because I'll tell you, if you feel that way, maybe you're sneaking it in a way that there's a reason you feel sleazy, right? Like you want to be very explicit with that, but also dealing with having a customer call in and you having to tell them that they do not have a life policy in place for one of their family members that just passed away. I had to deal with 2 calls like that. I would much rather deal with these feelings with myself and deal with that rejection of hearing no. I would much rather deal with that than have to deal with those phone calls again, right? And so again, evaluate your belief. Like, I believe in the life insurance product because I've seen it help people, but I've also seen how not having it has affected people as well, right? And so I think we're all going to be at different areas, but it's fun to hear, Gary, that, Gary started out just like a lot of us, right? Where it's like, not really finding success in financial services, not really selling life insurance, and he had all these limiting beliefs, but now look where he's at, right? Gary, I would argue you're probably making more money than you were before, right? For me, I felt more of a fulfillment in my role as a team member when I started to help protect people in this way, right? So the job, it's like, I actually like the job. I'm in a position where I'm feeling fulfilled in my role as a team member and the impact that I'm having. And we're protecting more people's financial futures. Like, something beautiful happens. Exactly. It becomes this win in so many ways when we can do that. But if you're dealing with these limiting beliefs, like, you're not alone. I think we all go through them. I think we'll continue to go through them in our growth and our development. I love that.
Yeah. Another thing on that too, like, if you feel like you're not selling a bunch of life insurance, or you're not talking about it enough, or say you're just not marketing it to everybody. Like, Coulter had a great video meeting one day, and it was about the 6 minutes per day. All he wants you to do is work 6 minutes per day. That sounds awesome, right? Everybody wants to work 6 minutes a day, not have to do anything else. But the thing is, during that 6 minutes, he wants you to talk to 6 different people for at least 1 minute, at least trying to market life insurance to them or a financial service. And just hearing it worded that way helped me tremendously, because, like, before I was always just scared to get into the conversation, scared to get rejected. And then whenever I heard it like said like that, it really clicked in my head that, I've only got to talk to these people for a couple of minutes. If they don't want it, they don't want it. If they do, we're going to get something set up in 5 or 10. So it's not like it's the end of the world if I get rejected from it. It's just like on to the next one. So that was something that really, really helped. And I would recommend anybody going to watch that hasn't seen it.
I love that, man. And that was a big game changer for me. Is in my mind, it was just so overwhelming to think about the life production, the health production that I wanted, that I just got so overwhelmed that it was almost like this analysis paralysis where I didn't even start. And so this 6 minutes concept was like, look, just have 6 life conversations today. It takes about 20 seconds for me to bring it up, 20 seconds for the customer to respond, 20 seconds for me to respond to the customer. And if I could just hit those 6 consistently every single day, I mean, we do the math. There are 5 days in a working week times 52 weeks in the year. Let's maybe take off 4 weeks to be, for vacation, sick days.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Let's see, 256 days, working days. Guys, if you do 6 life conversations a day, it's over 1,500 life insurance opportunities that you created that year. I mean, the law of large numbers, if you have a 10% closing ratio, which is pretty low, you're going to write over 150 life apps in that year. That is the power of these small and simple things that I love that Gary has brought up. And, Gary, it's fun to hear how the group has helped you. And I guess that's kind of where I want to end this podcast is you guys have been part of our group for, maybe a little under a year now. But for those that are listening to this podcast that aren't part of the Team Member Perspective training and accountability group that we have, that aren't part of our sales league and the leaderboard, like what recommendations do you have like about the group? How has the group helped you? What would you say to these guys?
So the group is great just because there's so much different like opportunity and videos and stuff like that. The thing about it is the way you do it, Coulter, you really word things differently than how I hear it from an agent because you were in that team member position. It's a lot easier to hear it from another team member than it is your agent because Christian tells me something, it just doesn't always work because half the time you get people on the phone, all they want to do is talk to the agent because his name's on the building. And you'll deal with that. That's part of it. But, hearing the way you word stuff and the way to object the rejections from a team member really definitely helps. I would also say the leaderboard every month, like I'm looking at it here on my computer, I really enjoy that. I'm a competitive person. I always have been. And so every time I sell an app, I'm immediately on there going and updating the leaderboard. And there's some good incentives on there too. So, I would strongly recommend anybody that wants to increase their life sales, agents or team members to, definitely join in here.
I love it, man. I love it, dude. And it's fun to have you. It's been a blast. And there is something, just like you say, like there is something about that team member perspective, right? Because I was the same way as you. Team members listening to this, I guarantee you this is a conversation going on in your mind. Maybe it's not so much now, but at some point you've dealt with this or will deal with this where it's like, oh yeah, of course you can have that conversation because your name's on the building, but that won't happen for me in the same way. I won't get the same result. Now, whether that's completely true or not, we've all thought it, right? We go there and it's an easy out, right? Like, how easy is it for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm not going to have that conversation because of that, right? But when we hear from different team members, right? We hear from a variety of top producing team members of how they do it. Something happens there. It's this belief that, hey, if Gary, who is a team member that is doing the exact same thing as me, if it works for him, it can work for me too. And all of a sudden we actually go and we take action and then we have it laid out of exactly how that action looks so we get results. So Gary, I appreciate you, my man. It's been a pleasure. So fun to see you competing on the leaderboard. And those team members that are in our group, challenge Gary, right? Get this guy to do more, but I promise you it's not going to be easy. Like he will keep showing up. He's checking his leaderboard every single day so he knows where he stands. So if you want to get up and you want to beat him, you've got to really, really show up because I know he's not going to back down. Even if it's the last day of the month and he's down 5 apps, hey, don't rule Gary out. This guy will come out of nowhere and he will make it happen. I've seen it multiple times. So Gary, my man, such a pleasure to have you. We're going to have you back on again at some point. But I appreciate you sharing your story. And the biggest thing is just sharing that, hey, look, I started here, right, which is not where you are today. And again, if this can work for Gary, it can work for you too. So Gary, so much value in this, my man. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. And guys, again, if you are not part of the Team Member Perspective Training Accountability Group, reach out to us. We can share how it is helping team members and agencies all across the country and share how you can involve your team members. You can get involved with this top producing elite team member community that we're building. We'd love to have you. So if you're interested, please go to tmperspective.com and we would love to connect with you. Appreciate you guys, and we will catch you in the next episode.